Evans. Moving on to public comments, I don't see anyone in the audience tonight, and the sheet is blank, so we can move on. Thank you so much. Yeah, so we can move on to agenda item number 5, Treasurer's Business. Mr. Muccio.
Thank you, Mr. Dobbins. A couple items tonight for approval. 5A, approval of minutes. Motion to approve the minutes of the April 6th, 2022 regular meeting is found in attachment C1. Item 6A. Motion to accept the bank reconciliation, financial reports, and payments for board review as of March 31st, 2022, as prepared and certified by the treasurer is accurate, is found in attachment T2. Item 6B. Motion to approve new vendors to the school district for W-9s attached, as found in attachment T3. Item 6C. Motion to accept the funds associated with the Ohio Attorney General's fiscal 22 school safety grant in the amount of $4,434.30. A new account number 499-922A will be created entitled School Safety Grant Fiscal Year 22 Ohio Attorney General. Item 6D. Motion to approve purchase orders over $5,000 as found in attachment T4. Item 6E. Motion to adopt the tax rate resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Cuyahoga County Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the Cuyahoga County Fiscal Officer as found in attachment T5. Item 6F. Motion to approve a modification to the permanent appropriations for fiscal year 2022 as found in attachment T6. Item 6G. Motion to approve the repayment of insufficient funds to the Ohio Department of Education in the amount of $17,515.28 per the notification by Elena Sanders, Financial Manager, Office of Budget and School Funding at the Ohio Department of Education. Item 6H. Motion to approve the following then and now certificate pursuant to section 5705.41 of the Ohio Revised Code. It is hereby certified that both at the time of the making of this contractor order and at the date of the execution of this certificate, in the amount, making of this contractor order at the date of the execution of the certificate, the amount required to pay this contractor order has been appropriated for the purpose of this contractor order and is in the treasury or in process of collection to the credit of the fund, free from any previous encumbrance. I ask for those motions for approval tonight.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the treasurer's consent agenda items? Issue to lose. I'll second. Any discussion?
Yes, just wanted to point out a couple things. For item 6A, if we were to look at the lead sheet T2D that we have in place, it's going to show, and I'll talk about this in more depth when we do the 5-year forecast May 11th. But on line number 1, general property taxes, our property taxes came in this year at $9.3 million, which is higher than the estimate in column R, which was the November 2021 5-year forecast amount of 8.9. So our property taxes came in at 9.3. The forecast was 8.9. And I'll touch base more on that during the 5-year forecast. Now, while that's good news, I attended a Suburban Health Consortium meeting a few days ago, and they were talking about what the rate increase would be coming up, and it's not crazy to talk about a 10% increase. So while we're seeing favorable numbers here, we also have to balance that against unfavorable circumstances that are ahead, as in a 10% increase from the Health Insurance Consortium. One example of why that would be driven up, one of the high claims that's out there for the member school districts, keep in mind there's about 20 school districts that are members of Suburban Health, is an $800,000 COVID claim. So, we just have to be mindful of that coming up. So while we do have favorable aspects of the forecast, there's going to be unfavorable ones too. So hopefully it balances out. Keep going from there. Item 6B, approve new vendors to the school district. Nothing too major. I'll run down the list for what we have. We have 6. Jennifer Wright, which is going to be the pianist for the play. We have Jones School Supply Company, that's awards and ribbons. A local school district for the softball tournament. A music repair shop. A sound and lighting vendor to repair a subwoofer. And we have Track Ribbons, a company that produces those. So nothing major material or significant as far as the amounts go for those vendors. Click over here. Item 6C is the acceptance of the Ohio Attorney General School Safety Grant in the amount of $4,434.30. Great news. I want to thank Mr. Dave Wallace for working on this grant. Did a fabulous job, and we're going to touch base more on this grant of what we're purchasing with it in a bit, but great news that we received that from the Ohio Attorney General's office. Purchase orders over 5,000, we have 3. And the first one is for ceiling repairs. That's Ceiling Pro of Ohio. That's $7,800. That's ceiling repairs and painting of the high school hallways, along with room number 225. I'm not sure, Al, is that your room? Oh, he left. So, number 2, Bond Chemical Company. That's for cooling towers, both at the elementary and high school, and the descriptions in T4B, if we want to look more into that, that's $8,577.04. And number 3 deals with the grant that we're looking to approve previously. The vendor is CDWG, and that's for 6 surveillance cameras and 1 turning camera. So the grant's going to pick up $4,434 of the total $7,566.74. So pretty good for that. The tax rate resolution. So I have a couple attachments here. I attached last year's tax rate resolution. I also attached our alternative tax budget that we approved back in January. And the tax rate resolution that we have before us today, it's very simple. We don't have too much on there. We're lucky. We don't have a lot of different levies. But we can see our 4.1 inside and our 31.6 outside voted levies that we have. And essentially, that's the only part of this resolution that we're verifying back to Cuyahoga County that those rates are correct, which they are. So I'll return this once it's approved back to the office. And it was interesting too because they had delayed it for a time, and we talked about this at a previous meeting. So we have this up for approval tonight, but typically it takes place in March. 6F is a modification to the appropriations, so we have 3 tonight. Number 1 is the increase of $4,434.30. That's for Fund 499. That's for us to appropriate the amount that we're going to spend on the Ohio Attorney General School Safety Grant. And then we have 2 very small increases to the appropriations. We have $167.49. That's the Fund 516. And then we have $11.29 to Fund 587. The reason we're increasing the very small amounts that we have there are these are grants from federal sources passed through the Ohio Department of Education, and ODE reallocated a certain amount to us. That takes place maybe numerous times during the year, so we're just bumping it up to spend 100% potentially of those grants within this fiscal year for what we have. So 6G, actually before I click off of 6F, if we click on the attachment that we have there, T6, what we can do is we can see our whole pathway this year for our appropriations. So we can see that we approved our temporary appropriations 6/30/2021. Then we had our first modification back in September 22nd, our second modification October 20th, our third November 17th, our fourth December 8th, our fifth February 9th, 6th February 23rd, 7th March 23rd, and 8th April 27th. And we can see the path that we took, whether we were raising or decreasing those amounts as we go. Here. We have 6G, which is the repayment of the amount owed back to ODE. We talked about that in pretty extensive detail at the last board meeting. That's for the overpayment that they gave us. So essentially, if I'm using an example, they gave us $10, we're only due $5, so we have to pay back that overage. We can't just keep that. And the reason is it stems from ODE improperly calculating our base amount back in January for the new funding formula, and we had a negative in there, if everyone remembers, and then they overcompensated with the guarantee and gave us too much money. And then once it evened out and they corrected the base amount in the month of February, it evened out the guarantee, but at that point in time, they'd given too much to us, so they have to collect it back. So we're just dealing with the ripple effects of that incorrect calculation from January for the new funding formula that we H is just then and now certificates. We have two. I just wanted to make sure, we were covered from an audit standpoint. The first one's the Bureau of Workers' Compensation. That's $9,296. We approved that back on 4/6, but the invoice was dated 3/25, so I just wanted to make sure that we have this then and now certificate in case. And again, that was one of those unique circumstances where typically it worked like a clock, and then they came out with an additional premium, and we addressed it. Number two is tonight's repayment of the insufficient funds for $17,515.28. On their payment tile for ODE, and I've never done this before, so it's going to be roll through it the first time and be a veteran after that. But the payment tile has a date of 3/30/2020, and obviously we're at 4/27 today. So I just wanted to have this then and now certificate in place because we can't essentially commit to something without having a purchase order in place. That's the golden rule that we have for school districts. So we always have to have a purchase order before we commit to any type of cost. And if we don't, we have to have these then and now certificates. And anything over 3,000 has to be approved by the Board of Education. Anything under 3,000, the treasurer can legally approve.
Very good, thank you. Thank you. May we move to a vote then?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
On the
Yep.
one with the Bureau of Workers' Compensation, I see it totals 92.96.
Yes.
But it's listed, the same thing is listed twice. I was just confused of why, is it supposed to be two payments? Or is
No,
it-
just one payment. No, so what happened is the invoice from the Bureau of Workers' Compensation came, and we had board approved, that purchase order to pay at the 4/6/22 board meeting. The invoice is listed as 3/25/2022, so I just needed a then and now certificate to have a place for us to be able to pay essentially a commitment that we didn't have a purchase order prior. So we always want the purchase order first, then the invoice comes second. But in that case, that was a unique circumstance, so the invoice came first, then we board approved and had the purchase order second, but you can't do that, so you have to have that then and now
Are
certificate
you
in
talking
place
about
for the
this on the
others.
invoice?
Yeah.
There's two lines. One is the certified staff, one is non-certified staff. That's the only difference. Secret says certified.
Oh,
Okay.
There's two entries, but they're the same.
yeah,
Oh,
two
so
entries
over
of
here I read
4,000.
it says non-certified staff, non-certified staff.
Yeah, so if I click on if I click on the requisition, I see what you're talking about. Yeah, I just split it in two different equal payments to be coded for
Okay.
the certified and non-certified staff. Instead of lumping the entire cost there, I just want to show that half the cost is represented for non-certified, half the cost is represented for
I
certified.
was reading this line where it looked exactly the
Yep.
same, and that's why I got
Yep.
confused. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay,
Yeah, but we're only making one payment, so.
okay.
Okay, if there's no further questions or discussion, let's move to a vote then.
Mrs. Schukert,
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Ms. Prowse.
Aye.
Mr. Suchaki.
Aye.
Mrs. Henberg.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Treasurer's discussion, comments?
And just had two comments tonight. The first one is the May 2022 five-year forecast. Again, that's just our timeline that we have in place to present. So May 11th, 2022, the regular board meeting, the work session. It's going to be a long one, but I'll try to go fast through it. It's just the update of the five-year forecast. I've been hard at work working on it, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I don't want to promise anything because if I stick to a time, we're going to be looking at our clocks, so we'll roll through there. And then May 25th is the regular board meeting that will look to approve it. And then I'll submit it to the Ohio Department of Education thereafter, and it goes on their website now. And then 8B is going to be the Supply Chain Assistance, SCA funds. So this just came out, and it was actually interesting because I was telling Mr. Evans, when I was at the roundtable first ring for the treasurers, there were some treasurers in Cuyahoga County who didn't know about these funds. So that was kind of interesting. But what this is the, and I have a couple bullet points on the public content here. So the U.S. Department of Agriculture allocated $1 billion to address supply chain challenges for local school districts. Ohio received approximately $35 million of that. Cuyahoga Heights schools meet the criteria for these funds. Allowable uses would be for unprocessed domestic food products. So think of fluid milk, fruits and vegetables, grain products, and minimally processed foods such as frozen or canned fruits and vegetables. We had to fill out a statement to receive these funds, and they dealt with just us attesting to the fact that supply chain issues did impact us, and that's how we met the criteria for those funds. It was very broad and very easy to meet the criteria. We had to submit that form to ODE by April 15th. We submitted that form by April 4th. So well ahead of the due date. We expect to receive approximately $15,000, hopefully by May, so by next month. So we should see that. Once we do receive it, we'll do the same thing that we did tonight with the Ohio Attorney General. We'll board accept that, create a new fund, and I've already kind of earmarked, and we touched base and talked about this. There's really no time frame for these funds, and I sat in on an hour-long webinar, and it was one of the questions I had to ODE when these first came out, was just the time frame in which we had to expend these funds, but essentially, from what they told me, there is no time frame. So I'm gonna, make sure that we use it for an allowable cost. Fluid milk seems like the easiest one for us, so we typically buy close to that within a fiscal year, so I'm earmarking essentially all of the $15,000 for milk products for us for at least 1, maybe 2 years to cover it.
Now, how did we find out about this? So you said some school
email.
districts
Email.
didn't.
Well, everybody has, this is a product of our size. Matt, myself, and Pam Mead sit down, and everybody in our district knows about it. For a cafeteria manager in Brecksville to know about it, they have to go through 5 people for the superintendent to then know about it, because when I talked to Joelle, she hadn't even heard anything about it yet, because it hadn't gotten to her yet through their own supply chain in their district. It hadn't worked its way through, and I think that's probably what Matt's experienced with some of the treasurers too, that if they don't directly see the email or open it up and read it, because they're like us, on any given day, there's 15 to 20 emails from
Yeah.
ODE that have grants and what have you on it. If they don't look at it,
So the
they
email
don't
went
look
to
at it.
you, or the email went to Pam?
The email went to Pam, but it also went to Matt and myself. They went to all 3 of us.
Okay.
So Pam looked at it right away, and then within less than 24 hours, she had contacted, within 2 days, we sat down and we're meeting on it. Some of the other districts just don't react as quickly,
Because
so
I'm
it's,
assuming this is something that came out of the pandemic, correct?
as a result of it,
It's
yeah,
not-
so,
it's not
and
something
this
that
is,
happens every year.
and Pam was on this like right away. And when we sat down, Pam had a list of items that, the amount that we'll qualify for, again, the $15,000, we can go well beyond $15,000 if we needed to be, because even paper product, Joshen's right around the corner, where we get a lot of our paper products. We've had supply chain issues with a company that's less than a mile away from us. So,
Right, right.
it's,
Interesting. Very good. Well, that's good.
Yep.
And
That's
we
all I
have
have.
to
Fortunately-
pay back ODA.
well,
Well, yeah.
ODA once back,
Yeah,
and
it's
we can get
kind of-
something back.
but it's,
from a different-
we've been fortunate. Dave, with some of the safety things, has been Johnny on the spot. Some of those safety things have come up very quickly, and you saw Matt with the bus grant. We got our bus order in, and some districts are still working on
Yeah.
trying to put an order together. Ours was, so, trying to get it in as quickly as possible, so, before they change their minds on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Mr. Evans is correct, though. I mean, the treasurers that were sitting there when we were talking, they said the same thing. There's so many emails that it's easy to miss something. So, I mean, that's kind
Yeah.
of what was passed around the room. But yeah, it's the devil's in the details, I guess. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thanks to you and the entire administrative team, Ms. Mead and Mr. Wallace, in these specific instances for your keen eyes and your willingness and efforts to save the district money and ultimately provide greater value to our students. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Pam.
Mr. Evans, you're up next, I believe. Thank you, Mr. Mutcher.
Alrighty, 9A, approve the student handbook. Up here. Motion to adopt the Cuyahoga Heights student handbook for Cuyahoga Heights pre-K and elementary school for 2022-23 as recommended. 10A, motion to accept the resignation due to retirement of Chris Bazillo effective 6/30/22 after 33 years of service to the Cuyahoga Heights schools. 10B, motion to accept the resignation of Laura Havorka as a bus driver and cafeteria worker effective May 6, 2022. 10C, motion to accept the resignation of Todd Blom as a volunteer band assistant effective 4/10/2022. 11A, motion to approve the reemployment of the attached list of individuals in the classified staff positions and contracts stipulated effective with the 2022-23 contract year per the adopted salary schedule. 11B, motion to approve the employment of Jennifer Blados as a cafeteria worker effective with the 2021-22 school year 4.0 hours per day per the adopted salary schedule. Step 4, effective 4/4/2022, contingent upon successful completion of BCI FBI record checks, proper certification if applicable. 11C, resolved that the superintendent hereby appoint Robert Moore Jr. as Director of Information Technology for a period of 2 years from July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2024, and authorizes and directs the superintendent and treasurer to execute a written contract upon such terms and conditions as have been agreed upon. 12A, motion to approve the attached updated 2021-22 supplemental position contract list for 2021-22 as updated for April 27, 2022, contingent upon successful completion BCI FBI checks and proper certification if applicable. 13, motion to approve the attached substitute teacher list 2021-22 as updated for April 2022 by the Educational Service Center of Northeast Ohio. 14A, motion to approve the final banquet contract with Windows on the River for prom of 2022. 14B, motion to accept revised 2021-22 inter-district agreement with the ESC of Northeast Ohio to reflect recent employment of a substitute student attendant, Yvonne Adams, see the attachment. 14C, motion to approve salary step adjustment for cafeteria worker Mark Chase. I ask that those items be approved.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the superintendent's consent agenda items. Ms. Schubert moves.
Second.
Mr. Souchaki seconds. Discussion?
Mrs. Houchin, anything to highlight in the,
Really no significant changes, there's little tiny tweaks that we made and a couple of changes for requirements to pre-K, but nothing significant like we have in years past.
Chris Bazidlo, after 33 years? Normally I like to poke a little bit of fun at the retirees, and Chris Bazidlo, I will absolutely be unable to poke fun at. I told Chris, I said, I'm gonna do a slideshow, and I looked up the nicest person on the planet, and Chris Bazidlo's picture popped up. It's just a sweetheart of a person. She brought me brownies with her resignation letter. I think that's a first. But it's like just a wonderful, wonderful lady. So we'll miss Chris. And Joy's going to talk a little bit more about some of the staffing in the elementary building in executive session. Laura Vorka has been bus driver and cafeteria worker for us, moving on. And Todd Blom has been kind of run the drum line for us, and had always said that when Sokol stepped away, he was going to step away. He stayed 1 year with Mrs. Schroeder, and Todd turned in his resignation. We thank Todd for all his years of dedicated service, and I think Todd will boastfully say he's retired undefeated. Our drum line is retired. It was undefeated in all his years as a leader of the drum line, but we thank Todd for all his service to our band and our outstanding drum line through the years. Classified staff, I'll try to open the attachment there. You can see the that's the list there, and those are rehires there. There's no new additions to that list there. And the next step onto their, where they would fall into their contract schedule. Jen Blados is picking up some additional hours as a cafeteria worker. Robert Moore, you've got his applications in front of you. I think I highlighted the process with for Robert Moore. We went through the second round of interviews was relatively grueling by design. The three applicants were here for 3 hours. They spent an hour with 6 teachers, 2 elementary, 2 middle, 2 high school up here. They spent an hour with support staff, which was Mr. Souchaki as a representative of the tech committee, Mr. Kelber from the athletic department, some of the secretarial staff. Was anybody from the custodial staff in there? Jim Zerbola was in there, and also a member of the Cuyahoga Heights Village, because we're talking about some shared services. And then they were to present a 5-year kind of a forecast, technology forecast to the administrative team, and Mr. Dobbins was downstairs with us. So they rotated between those 3 groups, and it was designed to be somewhat grueling for them. We came back up here and had a pretty good discussion. I really couldn't get a consensus from that, which was okay. I sent out a little bit of a survey afterwards, and Robert was overwhelmingly the number one selection of the group. I told him it might be a little bit of a time. I went on my little vacation there and visited the Big Mouse in Florida. Got back and called some of Robert's references and also some people that Robert didn't have listed that I knew where he worked, and got some pretty good reviews from Robert, and sat down with him last night to offer him the position, and he accepted the position. So his contract, I know the question of his contract will be very, very similar to the contract that Dave Wallace is currently working on. As a matter of fact, almost identical to what the contract Dave Wallace is working on right now. And I'll email you some of the details. I sent that off to John. John's gonna, what I did is I put it on a little bit of an offer sheet to Robert, so he knew some of the parameters are. John's gonna craft that into a contract that, and I kinda was in contact with Mr. Dobbins a little bit as how I was proceeding with that. But I did talk to John over the weekend. John said we would be okay to proceed this way with that. So excited about Robert. I think the team was as well. I think Robert's excited about coming on board with us as well. So, and we'll try and have him at a meeting coming up here so we can meet him firsthand here. So, supplemental positions.